Whether your native language has an alphabet or not, you are sure to have at least an idea of what it is. English, German, Italian, Spanish, all of these languages are represented with alphabets, but the question is how many of them exist in the world? And more importantly, how did alphabets appear? When was this starting point? All of this and even more in this video. First of all, let's answer the question, what is an alphabet? Generally speaking, an alphabet is a set of graphemes, letters, written in a specific order, representing sounds of certain languages. It is probably the most well-known and widespread writing system. By the way, if you would like to know what other writing systems exist in our planet, make sure to subscribe and watch this video. But if you happen to have already watched this video, you must know about such a thing as abjad, often called an alphabet too, which is not really true. An alphabet represents a set of consonants and vowels, meanwhile abjads have characters to represent consonants only, for example Hebrew or Arabic. However, and we will see it soon, abjads and alphabets do have a connection. They've been shared throughout history. If you're looking for a starting point to say when the first ever alphabet appeared, we will have to go back as far as to 2700 BCE to ancient Egypt. By that time, Egyptian writing had developed a set of around 24 hieroglyphs, each representing a syllable. However, it is believed that Egyptian writing of that time was never meant to encrypt Egyptian speech and instead was used to transcribe loan and foreign words. By the middle of Bronze Age, another system called Proto-Cynetic script had emerged in Central Egypt and is said to have been created by Semitic workers who spoke a Semitic language, who are believed to have taken Egyptian hieroglyphs to remake them, to remodel if you want, and create a different script. Nevertheless, a real history of creation of the Proto-Cynetic writing remains under the veil of secrecy and is believed to be based on Egyptian hieroglyphs simply because of their graphic similarity. In addition to that, considered the earliest trace of alphabetic writing, this script is still some kind of a secret and has not been wholly deciphered yet. And so, step by step, century through century, we're coming closer to see when the first ever alphabet was created, but it's still way to go. It took ages to Proto-Cynetic script to develop into the so-called Phoenician alphabet after going through many changes. Even though it is widely known as Phoenician alphabet, in reality, in a narrow sense, it is an abjad consisting of 22 consonant letters, no vowels. The oldest text in Phoenician script is claimed to be the inscription on the sarcophagus of King Ahiram, a Phoenician king of Byblos. The Phoenician script was successfully spread into the Mediterranean and some parts of North Africa by the Phoenicians themselves, merchants trading in those areas. Another explanation of the spread of the Phoenician script was its relative simplicity comparing to Egyptian hieroglyphs, for example. Now the script was represented by symbols, each of them indicating a specific sound, which was rather easy to learn and therefore meant the imminent beginning of literacy, which before had been available to the elite only. Remember that the Phoenician script had only consonants. When this abjad was adopted by Greeks, it was them who created the first ever alphabet, the Greek alphabet. The word alphabet itself originated from the Greek word made from the two letters alpha and beta. The Greeks took letters from Phoenician, and those ones that didn't represent sounds in Greek were said to represent vowels. Over time, some new letters were introduced to the alphabet, meanwhile some others dropped out of use. Of course, there were some other changes too. In the beginning, Greek was written just like Phoenician, from right to left. Later, the Greeks began to alternate between left to right and right to left writing directions until finally, in the classical period, it became a norm to write from left to right. What also needs to be said is that originally Greek had only one form to write a single letter. The distinction between uppercase and lowercase appeared in the modern era, and its use for marking some names, titles, and some other specific words developed alongside with Latin. Ancient writing distinguished two styles: the writing called unical, used for books, literary and religious manuscripts, and the cursive writing, used for everyday purposes. The most interesting thing is that Greek was divided into several types. The south one, green, was the closest to the Phoenician script. The Eastern Greek is the type from which the later Standard Greek alphabet emerged, and ultimately the Western type, which was transmitted to Italy, where it gave rise to the Old Italic alphabets, Etruscan and Latin alphabets being among them. So the Italian peninsula was inhabited by the Western Greeks and Etruscans who ruled early Rome. Therefore, their alphabet evolved in Rome too. The Latins are believed to have adopted their writing system, which also went through many changes over centuries, adding and dropping out some letters. Latin adopted the Greek letters Y and Z to write Greek borrowed words, placing them at the very end of the alphabet, which remains like this to the present day. Letter W was added to the Latin alphabet when the Anglo-Saxon language began to be written with Roman letters after Britain was invaded. And like this, the Latin/Roman alphabet was spread all over Europe as the Romans expanded their empire. It'd be fair of you asking why the language they spoke in the Roman Empire was called Latin, why not Roman? The thing is that Latin as an alphabet and a language emerged thanks to an ancient Italic people, the Latins, who inhabited Latium region in central Italy. Rome, being one of the Latin states, eventually became the center of the Roman Empire, and by the time it became an empire, it was probably already too late to change the name of the alphabet and the language. So Latin was left with its original name. Continuing the topic with the Roman Empire, we can see now how its expansion let the Latin language and the Latin alphabet spread from the Italian peninsula to the Mediterranean. Later, Northern Europe adopted the Latin script as well, with the help of the spread of Western Christianity too. Germanic, Celtic, Baltic, some Uralic languages that used different alphabets before switched to the Latin one. Another interesting example of how a language switched to the Latin script is Romanian. It was in the 19th century when the Romanian changed the Cyrillic script to the Latin one. The same, by the way, did the countries of Azerbaijan, Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan. The Kazakh language is going through the same changes now. I guess now it'll be logical to continue with Cyrillic, my native writing script. Not sure if I can call it so, but anyways. The history of the creation of Cyrillic, one of the most widespread alphabetic scripts, is surprisingly rather confusing, and the discussion of how Cyrillic was created is still open. What we can be sure of is that Cyrillic derived from the so-called Glagolitic alphabet, the oldest known Slavic alphabet, which initially evolved from Greek. Glagolitic script is said to have been created by Saint Cyril, a monk from Thessalonica, in the 9th century. It all appeared when he and his brother Saint Methodius were asked to spread Christianity around Central Europe in 863 by the Byzantine Emperor Michael III. The brothers found it impossible to translate liturgical texts from Greek and Latin into the language used by the Slavic population, Old Church Slavonic. That's how Cyril decided to make up a new script, which became known as Glagolitic. Later, the Glagolitic script was a bit modified, and that's how the Cyrillic script evolved, which is said to start dominating the Glagolitic script in the 12th century. But who exactly invented the Cyrillic script? That's where opinions start to differ. Some say it was Cyril himself, others claim it was one of Cyril and Methodius' students, but what we can say for sure is that the script took the name after Saint Cyril and remains the script for writing in many languages: Russian, Belarusian, Serbian, Macedonian, and others. Coming to the end of today's video, there are two more alphabets I'd love to mention, because they seem fairly interesting, and one of them is the Georgian script. As the Wikipedia says, there are actually 3 Georgian scripts. One is used as a standard script for modern Georgian, meanwhile the 2 other ones are used only in religious writing. What surprises me about this script is that it looks unusual and so different from the others, and secondly, the real story behind its creation remains a mystery. There are some theories, though. Some claim that the Georgian script was inspired by the Greek alphabet. Others insist on its connection to one of the Semitic alphabets. The Aramaic alphabet evolved from the Phoenician alphabet and already extinct, which was adopted by Armenians, inhabitants of the central regions of modern Syria. And finally, runes. The runic alphabets are still associated sometimes with Germanic peoples, and that's right, runes were generally used to write Germanic languages before. As I've already mentioned, they were replaced by the Latin alphabet. However, runes are said to have continued to be used for different purposes, cultural, decorative, for several centuries more. Like the Georgian script, the exact origin of runes is still uncertain, and the stages of its development are quite unclear. But it is claimed that the runes emerged from the Phoenician alphabet, like, as it turns out, the majority of other alphabets. The world of languages never stops to amaze me. There are so many topics to discuss, and every topic seems like a rabbit hole, like, for example, the one we brought up today in this video. If you'd like to see more videos related to languages, subscribe and join my free newsletter on my website. Your comment down below will also help my channel grow. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next videos.